Joining us on Talking Sense today, Cilliers Brink. How's it, Cilliers? Good to have you on.
Hi, great to be here, Gabriel.
So, Cilliers, I think a good place to start is with a bit of background on who you are. So, just take us through, like, how and why did you get into politics, and what was your journey that led you up to becoming mayor of Tshwane? But hold on the mayor stuff for the moment.
Sure. Growing up, I had this very strange and, what's the word? Unusual interest in politics. Perhaps because my parents spoke about serious stuff at the dinner table. We never really, they never really dumbed down the conversation. And my formative years, the first memories of current events and so on, was the Iraq War and Cadessa,
Yes.
constitutional negotiations.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
my father had particular opinions about it. He was a very strong supporter of a new constitutional order and democracy and so forth. And those debates and discussions maybe provoked an interest, which just bloomed in the years that came. I always debating, public speaking. I was always, arguing with the teachers at school. And
Yes, yes.
and I grew up for most of my time in a place called Palabora, a small little town with a gate to the Kruger National Park. But it's also very far from any kind of, major urban centers and political activity and debate and so on.
Civilization generally.
I wouldn't go that far. We're pretty civilized there. That's a good tourist destination. But that's an era before Facebook and social media.
Okay.
And I used to go and buy the newspaper
Yes.
when I came out of school, and an early form of political activism was writing letters to the editor. I don't know if people still do that. Is that still a thing? Newspapers hardly exist anymore. But
No, comment section exists now.
yeah, comments. Yeah. So not you don't have to. Yeah, the letters were better.
Yeah.
Think about what you were writing. So that was kind of an early form of political activism, and I dated a girl at school whose uncle went to university with Tony Leon.
Okay.
And I think for my 18th birthday, she sort of organized me meeting Tony, which was a great experience. And from there, became involved at DA Students Organization at University of Pretoria. I studied law, but I was always more enthusiastic about politics than law.
Okay.
And that's how it started.
Yeah. So you finish studying law, you get an LLB. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And congratulations for never using it. I feel because you go straight into politics after that.
I did use it for a bit.
Okay.
I did start my articles. In fact, I wrote the attorney's admission exam and everything. The problem was I was elected a city councillor while doing my articles, and that sort of brought all sorts of complications. And
Yeah.
you have to ask for permission and so on. And I just steered away from a career in law. I was in business for a while, family business, paint retail, and contracting.
Okay.
But all of my passions and interests and preoccupations brought me back to politics. And
Yeah.
for me, like a key turning point in my career, the decision between a full-time law or pretty much full-time politics, was in 2016. By that time, I had been a city councillor for a while, about 5 years.
Okay.
And the DA became the largest party in the city of Tshwane in that particular election. Although we didn't have a majority in the council, and as I will maybe explain later, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
But that landed me an offer from Mayor Salim Simanga. Please become my member of the Mayoral Committee for Corporate and Shared Services, which includes legal services, the fleet, customer relations, all the nuts and bolts of government. And that was, to me, the time and the place where I learned the most of government and politics, of the reality of trying to turn a city around, and of the limitations of what you can actually do amidst massive public expectations. So that was a very formative period of time for me.
Yeah. And you, after becoming a city councillor, just remind us, that was you have the mayoralty after that election, but there has been kind of back and forth really ever since. So can you just take us through like a kind of very brief chronology of that time period of what happens in the next election, and how you end up eventually as the mayor then?
So in 2016, the ANC loses control, or it loses its majority in 3 major metros: Johannesburg, Pretoria, Tshwane, Nelson Mandela Bay.
Yeah.
The problem is that the parties that then form a coalition in those cities don't have a council majority.
Okay.
Now, that is very important because it's not just through the office of the mayor that you exercise control and make fundamental changes in these places.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a working majority in the council.
Yes.
It is the council that passes the budget. It is the council that appoints the municipal manager. It is the council that appoints the senior managers who report to the municipal manager. It's the council that can fire and essentially investigate and suspend in the meantime those officials, raise long-term loans, engage in long-term contracts. So once you take over from a previous administration, you are well and truly a successor in title. Everything stays the same: the personnel, the policies, the infrastructure, and to turn this ship around, if I can sort of use that metaphor, to have a steer on it, you need a council majority. You can have a charismatic, engaging, intelligent mayor like Salim Simanga, but if your own party and the coalition that you've cobbled together to turn around this dire situation which the city of Tshwane was in 2016 does not have the power to change things in the council, then you are in office but not in power.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to get ahead of the interview, but to illustrate the point, at one critical juncture, Salim Simanga as mayor had to decide to investigate a city manager that we had appointed by the name of Moeketsi Mosola for an apparently irregular tender award. And remember, city councillors, mayors don't sit on tender committees. We are barred by law from sitting on those committees.
Interesting.
The logic is that if you keep the politicians out, then you wouldn't have irregularities. However, the reality is that the entire state has been captured by ANC cadres. So the only thing you're keeping out are the democratically elected leaders that come in and try and fix things. But be that as it may, this irregular tender for turnkey project management solutions, which the mayoral committee, the mayor didn't award, but we have oversight of it. And the moment Solly brought that investigative report to the council in 2018, he got notice from the EFF to say, listen, if you go through with this, we're going to bring a motion of no confidence. To Solly's credit, he did go through with it, but because the ANC and the EFF together held a majority between them of seats in the council, they blocked the suspension of that city manager, which effectively scuppered the investigation. And in the end, they blocked the dismissal. And this didn't happen once, it happened twice. And there's a fascinating book by Poli van Wyk and Micah Reddy on Malema's patronage network, where when one of these votes against the city manager was happening in the council, that city manager, while on leave, interestingly, signed off on a particular tender, which subsequently led back to Malema's patronage network. In other words, there is very compelling evidence that the political protection provided by the EFF, but also the ANC, was part of a bigger deal. Now, please give that book to Shamila Batoy at National Prosecuting Authority. But in the meantime, it gives you an indication of the constrained position that we were in Tshwane, Johannesburg, and Nelson Mandela Bay in the years 2016 to 2021. There was this massive expectations that DA mayors were going to change things, but we had the constraints of not having a majority in council.
It's almost, this has happened now 2 times around. There's the 2016 elections and the 2021 elections. And there's kind of this sense that I get from a lot of people who expect that, what they're able to do is somehow smash this kind of blue button, and that you're going to somehow, the DA, if everything goes wrong, the DA will be able to sweep in and kind of solve the problems that the ANC has been created. And really, so we've always got this backup waiting for us. But it's so interesting because it seems that it's not just DA voters who have this kind of sense in their head. It seems that there's a general sense in the country.
Everyone holds the DA to much higher expectations.
Exactly. But when people have this expectation that they can hit the blue button, they don't think that it's good enough, though, to go and vote for the ability to have that blue button, because, this blue button, sorry to keep harping on this lame metaphor, but the blue button can only really exist if the DA actually has the ability to come in and do things. Because otherwise what you're doing is you're saying to you guys come in, you have no ability to affect any change, and we're going to be really upset at you for not being able to be. We were the ones that put you in this position in the first place. So,
And it's a game the ANC loves playing.
mm,
You know, they hand us this car wreck of a city of Tshwane in 2016, including a string of irregular contracts. One of those contracts was for the provision of smart prepaid electricity meters. We paid some go-between. The DA in opposition voted against that contract. The company was called Payo Tums. I think it's now been wound up. But in any event, in opposition, we voted against. A few years later, we actually have to manage this contract. By this time, the ANC government had realized the contract was bankrupting the city,
yeah,
and it was left to us to go to court to disentangle the city from this contract, because again, you are the successor in title to the administration. The reason I'm citing this is at the end of all of these irregular contracts entered into by the ANC, multi-billion rand, multi-year contracts,
yeah,
there were audit findings which, shock and surprise, they come when the DA is in office, but they reflect on a contract concluded years ago.
yes,
And now you've got this accumulated irregular expenditure. And at critical times, you would have ANC politicians, EFF politicians, Action SA politicians. They're all interchangeable these days. They'd say, look how badly the DA in Tshwane has done. Look at this accumulated irregular expenditure. In the meantime, that had been the damnosa hereditas of the ANC. That's the stuff that they messed up, left to us to clean up.
yeah,
And the story of what happened in 2016 has got an even worse ending because you have this council where you don't have a majority. The ANC and the EFF together have a majority, but they don't want to agree to form a government.
yes,
The EFF can only agree to disrupting the ANC as a way of getting a better negotiating position. That's what they do.
yeah,
And at the end of 2019, they start walking out of council meetings, collapsing council meetings. Council needs a quorum, 50% plus one. Those meetings can't sit. At that stage, the mayor had resigned. They couldn't elect a mayor. And this gives a pretext to the Gauteng ANC government to dissolve the council and put it under administration. But at the same time, lockdown comes down. So the constitution says if you dissolve a council, you need to have an election within 90 days.
yeah,
You can't have an election under lockdown.
okay,
So those ANC administrators in Tshwane remained there from March to October 2020. Prior to the administration, the city had a budget surplus of more than 200 million. In the financial year after the administrators were evicted by court order, the city has got a budget deficit of more than 4 billion.
Jesus.
Now that leads the city then to fall behind on the ESCOM bills when the DA mayor is restored and the coalition is elected later on. Yet again, those parties, the ANC and their proxy parties, would say, no, but look at the financial situation of Tshwane, completely disavowing their own anti-democratic impulse, using their own provincial government cadres and tenderpreneurs to sabotage the council. So I mention this not as a big excuse or to, cry about the DA being held to higher standards, but the DA does need power in order to change things. And that's one of the key lessons that I learned. If you don't have the majority in a council or a coalition that you can depend on with a majority, then you shouldn't assume power. And it's a lesson we also learned in Johannesburg, where there was all these pressure to make deals with Gated McKenzie and so on. But every time we came back to it is, for us to make a change, the DA needs to be the leading party in a council with an effective working majority.
Well, looking at it from the outside, it makes a lot of sense for what the little parties to kind of do what they do, because if I am, say, a 1 or 2 council seat party, but I hold the balance that keeps you afloat, then there's one way that I can really get my name out there, because I'm not going to be in any position. I will be a small player. If we have a competent kind of governance of whatever metro it is, I'll be a small player and a kind of small contributor to that. That's not likely to make any headlines. That's not likely to explode, social media. What is likely to do that is for a small party to find whatever, the kind of list of excuses is very short, and it's usually boils down to the DA is arrogant or racist. But I find this excuse, and then I can explode this big thing, and all of a sudden I get national coverage. And so it makes, it is kind of, it puts you in an impossible position that we have this. We don't actually, as democracy in South Africa, we don't actually have a normal kind of threshold system,
Mm.
which most PR systems have to keep those kind of incentives out of government, because what it means is that, as our politics is fracturing, and splinter parties are popping up here, there, and everywhere, you are going to find that this incentive just is going to continue to play out and play out and play out. It starts to look a little bit like worryingly like the Weimar Republic in Germany.
Well, hopefully not.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. I think there are some good democratic instincts that we have as a country that can counter that. But you're right. Look at Action SA 2021. Their leader says one thing consistently over and over again, Herman Mashaba: I will not form coalition with the ANC under any circumstances. And he repeats himself on message, in volume, over time. They put up election posters in Tshwane and Johannesburg in that year saying, are you gat full of politics? Then vote for us.
Mm.
So immediately they try and appeal to the novelty. Mashaba is not a real politician. He will disrupt the system.
Yeah.
And what happens, despite asking explicitly for an election mandate to form and lead coalitions that provide an alternative to the ANC, in 2004, Mashaba blows all of that up.
Yeah.
He brings the ANC to power in Johannesburg and in Tshwane. In Tshwane, he takes down a coalition that actually had enough numbers to govern the city without the ANC or the EFF. He brings those parties in exchange for the titular privilege of the mayoral position for Action SA's Nasipi Moya.
Yes.
And that's what happens. If you want a rule about smaller parties like Action SA, Rise Mzansi, Good, you name them, let's package them all.
Yeah.
The rule is that eventually they will all sell out to the ANC. They've got no worldview. They've got no electorate structures. They have big man, well, I don't want to call Mashaba's probably a small man, but they've got these people that are big in their own heads that run political parties like a sole proprietorship.
Yeah.
And if that leader decides, no, we're going to make a deal with the ANC, because obviously the ANC offers sweeteners, patronage, positions, and so forth, they put the politics right back to where it was before the ANC lost all of those votes.
Yeah.
So that's a very important lesson. And it was reinforced with the VAT vote in Parliament, where all of those parties lined up with the ANC. Literally, there are photos. There are photos of a press conference where they have their logos next to that of the ANC.
Yeah.
Musi Maimane, Patricia de Lille, Herman Mashaba, all of them sitting there, Michael Beaumont, saying, no, we support the VAT, but we don't support the VAT. And in the end, that was betrayal writ large, and that a very important warning. If we want to create order out of the chaos of coalitions, you have to make a choice between the DA and the ANC.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
And I think that's a very good kind of series of points you make there. Just an interesting point on that last thing about the VAT increase. I found it very ironic that, when they said that when the smaller parties voted with the ANC on the VAT increase, they said they were doing it out of a kind of sense of being constructive opposition. So constructive opposition obviously means...
Sounds like Martinus van Schalkwyk in the New National Party. That's exactly what they said just before they sold their voters out to the ANC.
Well, exactly. It's that constructive opposition means not being in opposition at all.
Not challenging.
Helping to construct the ANC's plans.
Yes, yes.
But I'm going to go move us back to a discussion on your time in mayor. And I know the viewers at home are probably a little bit upset that we're going to go back to a kind of the timeline question, but can you just briefly take us through the kind of series of events that happened? There's the election in 2021, you have a predecessor mayor in Randall Williams, and then you become the mayor of Tshwane. How does that happen? And then once you do become the mayor, I don't think there's a great understanding of what it is like to be a mayor in South Africa. So you get into this position, and on day one, okay, I have to be a mayor. And what does mayoring, mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
Interesting story. Randall Williams resigned in 2023 after a particularly bad audit outcome.
Yes.
And I think that, to a large extent, is also part of this damned legacy of the ANC. But be that as it may, once you assume that position, you also assume responsibility for fixing it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes being a mayor of a city like Tshwane that doesn't have that culture and tradition of an independent municipal service and a culture of performance, what makes it so dangerous. But be that as it may, I resigned my seat in Parliament to take up a seat in the Tshwane City Council. I was national spokesperson of the party and also spokesperson on local government. It was fairly, a cushy job, you could say.
Yeah.
At least not as much stress as being mayor or even a member of the mayoral committee. It's always easier in opposition. And before I'm even elected mayor, I lose the first vote to someone called Murunwa Makwarela, who the previous day had sat next to me at a press conference, giving his support to me, COPE leader in the council.
Okay.
And at the last moment, he decides from the seat of the speaker to field himself as candidate for mayor. And I actually lose that vote. Murunwa Makwarela becomes the mayor of Tshwane, and here I am in the opposition
And speaker.
seat. Well, he had to resign his position as speaker.
Okay.
Here I am, as having resigned my seat in Parliament, thinking, what's happening now? So as a harbinger of things to come, Murunwa Makwarela should have sort of focused my mind on how unreliable the coalitions were, because COPE was part of our coalition.
Yeah.
And he was backed by the ANC and later turned out 5 councillors of Action SA.
Interesting.
And to their credit, Action SA, along with the rest of us, did polygraph tests on all of their councillors. I think it's a fair thing to do. It's a bit drastic, but in the circumstances, you've got to explain to the public that how do you exercise the mandate that you get from the voters? Yeah. Anyway, to their credit, they got rid of those 5 councillors, and many other things happened. Oh, this is interesting. We discovered that Murunwa Makwarela was in fact an unrehabilitated insolvent, which in terms of the constitution did not make him eligible to even be a councillor, let alone the mayor of the city.
Yes.
He then produced, this is a long road, but I think it's interesting. It's an interesting story.
Yeah.
He then produces a rehabilitation order of the High Court, which turns out to be a forgery. It turns out to be a fake. He is then, in the history books of South Africa, the only mayor who was fired by a city manager. He was literally told, you must vacate the seat, which he does. So he was mayor for about a week, and that gave me the opportunity, plus Action SA getting rid of their 5 traitors, to be elected as mayor. So you asked a very important question: how does mayoring work?
Yeah.
Because people see the executive office at local government level and they think this must be the equivalent of the president in national government or the premier in provincial government.
Yeah, or like the CEO of a business.
Or a CEO of a business. Maybe it's closer to that, in fact, because your powers as mayor are far more constrained than those of the president or the premier, because a mayor exercises his powers with the council, a point that I made previously. So you get these 2 important political functions, the mayor, the council. The mayor sets the agenda, looks at the bigger picture, does an analysis of what is right and what is wrong with the city, what are the priorities. He then lists those priorities in order, and that must inform a draft budget and what we call an integrated development plan. All of the lists of programs and projects which you want to take on. Think of stuff like, how do we ensure that there's proper supply of water and electricity? How do we upgrade the roads? How do we get the bills to be accurate? All of those things.
Yes.
The mayor, as the chief strategist of the municipality, similar to a CEO, has the responsibility to give a vision and then a budget to the city council for their approval. But it is the council that actually votes on it to say, let it go through. And that's why it's incredibly important. We need good mayors. There's a shortage of good mayors. And you have to look at who a party fields as the mayor. It'd be interesting to see if the ANC fields mayoral candidates. They've been too ashamed of their candidates in the recent past, as they ought to be. But it'll be interesting to see. However, if you want your town or your city to move in a different direction, you need a DA council. It's not always possible for us to win majorities, which brings us to the point of the electoral system. However, if you put the DA in the leading position And if you understand that these splinter parties, such as Action SA, Rise Mzansi, Good, etc., as a rule, will always sell out to the ANC,
Yeah.
then you give a platform to a good mayoral candidate to actually deliver and change things. So, point about the electoral system, proportional representation is almost guaranteed to deliver coalitions. I think the good record that we have in government in Cape Town has insulated the DA against some of the effects of proportional representation.
Yeah.
So many people in Cape Town do understand that the city is governed far better than the rest of the country.
Yes.
And to hold on to that, and obviously we've made mistakes, but Jordan Hill Lewis, for example, is an excellent mayor. He is one of the best. And also somebody who could have had something else in the private sector, but decided to dedicate himself to politics and to his own city.
Yeah.
So I think you hinted at this, but all major systems of proportional representation, when we were copying and pasting this thing from Germany and Denmark, we left out a key component in our constitutional negotiations, and that is a threshold of representation. So at least clear 1%.
Yes.
So clear the gates, get 1% of the vote. It's not a big limitation on your democratic rights.
Yeah.
And if you clear that, then you can get representation. However, if you can't clear that, you shouldn't get representation.
Yeah.
And as a practical example, you take the political parties in Joburg at the moment. If you put a 1% threshold of representation in the Joburg Council, you take it from 19 political parties currently represented in council to 9. Now, that doesn't guarantee success.
Yeah.
But at least you reduce the number of folks who make demands upon the system of governance. You make a governing arrangement far more likely.
Yes, exactly. Well, you at least just simplify the maths, because if you have 19 political parties, 10 of which are below 1%, which means that they each have their own kind of small splinter agenda. Trying to marshal these people together, it's like, herding cats that hate each other.
And what makes this worse is if you've got a really low voter participation percentage, really low turnout, as we did in 2021, you can get parties get through with, I think there's one party in Tshwane, they got 3,000 votes in the entire city, and an electorate of 600, 700,000 voters.
Yes.
A city of 4.5 million people. 3,000 votes got a guy elected on a portion of I don't know what they call these things. Got this guy a seat in council. He doesn't have any particular agenda. He doesn't have any promises or profile. In Afrikaans, we call it a eendag vlieg. He will exist for the term of the election. He'll be gone in the next 5 years. And yet you've put the fate of the city potentially in the hands of a party like that. And with a threshold, not guaranteed to fix everything, but maybe make stable governments more likely.
In English, we call that the independent Democrats. And so I want to stick on this theme of mayor, and you've mentioned it a little bit in terms of kind of the powers that you didn't have that kind of hamstrung your ability. But you talk mainly about, the kind of majority in council, but the mayor isn't just hamstrung by the fact that, you need to bring council alongside with you to be able to do anything, and you need a council majority to control the bureaucracy of the city, both of which fundamental, incredibly important. But you're also denied a lot of powers of things that are crucial to your city. For example, there's a current fight going on in Cape Town with the devolution of policing powers. So what are the things that you found as mayor that you get in there, you see these huge problems that Tshwane is confronting, and you're like, gosh, why am I not able to deal with this? What are some of those things?
By far, the most consequential limitation on your powers is the fact that you can't have any direct role in the appointment or evaluation of service providers of the city. Now, I'm not advocating for any kind of an exception to the rule. I don't think politicians should be involved in tenders. But if you are inheriting a municipal administration that has been captured by political agents, which the ANC calls cater deployment, there's a formal policy for that. The Zondo Commission has confirmed that that's not just a myth, it's actual practice, and actually documented it.
Yes.
So they put the ANC over 20, 30 years, appointed politicians, political agents in technical positions, engineering services, finance, accounting, legal services, folks who are part of a network of the ANC. And that network also includes service providers. Now, you as a DA mayor, goody two shoes, can't interfere and process it. You are stuck with that institutionally corrupt, systemically corrupt system, where different people conspire almost in an invisible way to screw over the system and the residents.
Yes.
But you dare not interfere in tender processes. Now, at least you understand that limitation, but it's got major implications if you do want to increase the performance, because the cities and municipalities in general are so dependent on these service providers because they've been hollowed out from the inside. Qualified people were replaced in the first wave of cadre deployment and race-based employment laws. In the second phase, competent people of all backgrounds were effectively discouraged from applying. Because if you don't award excellence today, the effect tomorrow would be to discourage people who are excellent from actually choosing a career in local government. And that is a major structural issue that one needs to deal with. But for present purposes, you depend more and more on contractors. And those contractors fleece the city if there aren't good people on the city side of the table negotiating a tough deal, making sure that there's performance. Everything from fleet management to metering services to grass cutting. Everything is sort of bundled up in these tenders, and to get control of that, you have to follow this indirect process. First you have to replace the top management of the city, then the top management has to replace the middle management. Then you have to bring in changes to your part. So I'm not saying that it's impossible to do. It's certainly possible. But you have to go about in a way that respects the rule of law, and people expect that from us. There's more tolerance for a corrupt ANC or an ANC that doesn't follow the rules than there is for a DA guy who kicks down the door and says, to hell with this, we're going to do it this way. You'll be accused of interfering and so on and so on. So that is one major limitation. I can go to others as well. Appointments, the fact that if you want to follow disciplinary action against someone, it's a vote in the council. Now imagine if a director general who was caught with fraud or corruption or signing off on some crazy tender first had to go to a vote in parliament in order to decide whether you should even investigate. Now that is what the law says, what the regulations say.
Even just for an investigation.
For an investigation.
So you can't, as mayor, say, I think that there's something fishy
as
going
mayor, you are obliged within 7 days of discovering a possible irregularity or breach of the code of conduct, you are obliged to report it to the council.
Yes.
But it's the council that then votes. It makes two decisions. Do we proceed with an investigation or not? And secondly, do we suspend the guy pending the outcome of the investigation? And as I mentioned before with that Glad Africa scandal and Moeketsi Mosola, that was effectively scuppered by politics. If you were to apply the rule of law, the processes, independent of political consideration, that guy would have been fired. At least he would have faced a proper investigation.
But because some consequence.
Because the ANC and the EFF together control things, and they can make deals in the back of the council without accounting for it. That goes down to a vote. I think that's a fundamental area that should be reformed in our constitutional system.
For sure. I mean, I think that one of the greatest tragedies of the South African democratic era has been the reluctance by Pretoria to devolve powers to the lowest level, because South Africa as a state doesn't make too much sense to try and run completely from the center. It's a ethnically diverse country, geographically diverse country, 2.4 times the size of Germany, with a big population. And so we should be empowering, politics should be done from the local level upwards and not from Pretoria outwards, at least in our reckoning.
That is true. There are, however, some limitations. We want the Western Cape to have policing powers because, on a balance of probabilities, we know that if Jordan Hill Lewis and J.P. Smith were running things instead of Cyril Ramaphosa and whoever the Minister of Police happens to be at the moment, I can't quite keep track. The likelihood is that they will be able, with the powers and the budget. It's not just the powers, also the budget. Remember, national government collects all of this money.
Yeah.
So even if Cape Town wants to, and they field these LEAP officers and they do all of the initiatives, they don't have all of the resources that's collected by the national government into the National Revenue Fund. But if they had those powers and the budgets, they would probably be able to solve the gang and drug issue on the Cape Flats.
Yeah.
They will be able to use the apparatus of a capable state, which they have built over many years, to make people's lives safer.
Yeah.
And fascinating thing, while Cape Town and the Western Cape have been pushing for more policing powers, they've now discovered that the national government has been systematically starving the Western Cape of police appointments. So while they've been appointing people in other provinces, they have been taking resources away from the Western Cape, almost as if the ANC wants Cape Town to be, and the Western Cape to be unsafe, for policing not to work there.
Yeah.
And my colleague Jordan Hill Lewis has clearly shown through his analysis that has been what has been happening. However, you wouldn't necessarily want the Free State provincial government to have full power to do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
And so the concept of federalism, like it developed in America, it's not one way or the other. It's always a balance.
Yeah. It's a question of degree.
It's a question of degree. And you have to ask, where do you start?
Yes.
You know, United States started with a loose confederation of colonies, or whatever they called themselves, 13 colonies. And then decided, in order to be more effective, we need a stronger central government.
Yeah.
And the arrangement that they made there was a federal system.
Yes.
And we have to look at what we have. Gauteng probably doesn't have all of the capacity right now to do with law enforcement officers what the Western Cape has done.
Yeah.
The Tshwane Metro Police probably doesn't have the capacity right now, if you give them all of the powers, to fulfill those powers properly. So I think an important principle is one of functional federalism.
Yes.
If a devolved or a local or provincial government has shown that they get good audit outcomes, they're effective.
Yeah.
That puts them in a good negotiating position. Although, I also don't think that these governments should ask for permission. I think that the process of devolving power, of getting more powers for the cities and provinces, will happen de facto. It'll happen in practice.
Yeah.
If you have the capacity to field the officers, to do certain things which national government hasn't been doing, to run the ports, for example, if you have that capacity, you can step by step start doing those things.
Yes.
You might get an adverse audit finding, or the Auditor General might query certain things here and there, but you aren't going to let your town or your city or your province go to hell just because some rule says that what you can in fact do, you shouldn't be doing.
Yes.
So functional federalism, I believe, will happen as more and more towns and cities are governed well, and then are placed in a position to do the stuff which national government has been neglecting.
Yeah, I think it's a good kind of principle to live by. Rather ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yes, with important qualifications.
With important qualifications, yes. But especially in the case of Cape Town, I think there is a lot of room for the Cape Town government to see how much flexing its muscle can actually achieve. And I think that's because it will serve as a useful model if we can get it right. That's why you have federalism in the first place, is to be able to test policies on the local level and not have them, if they're a disaster, affect everyone in the country, right?
Bit of a marketplace of ideas.
Exactly. And so Cape Town, by doing this, is already kind of exhibiting the kind of primary benefit of federalism in its pursuit of a different policy agenda from the national government that allows us to see what the test results in.
Quite right.
But we've strayed a little bit, and I'm going to keep us coming back to Tshwane, and I will do kind of quicker questions on this. And so the first question I have about this was that before you became mayor, there was a story of Tshwane Metro Police, I think, who were kidnapping and extorting people. So what happened there? And then what did you how did you have to deal with that as the mayor?
So the story goes back to about 2015, the
Mm,
year before the ANC lost its majority in council.
mm,
And that year, similar to the Amapanyazas, which came up also about a year before the 2024 general election, the Tshwane Metro Police went on this massive recruitment drive.
mm,
And 1,000 Metro Police officers were recruited
mm.
in Tshwane in 2015.
Okay.
Looking back, many of those appointments didn't follow a recruitment process. There was no checking of criminal records, of, can this person actually fire a gun? Is there a gun license? Is there any training? It's very clear that the ANC used that as a massive patronage exercise
Mm,
to mobilize support before a very, very difficult election.
mm,
And that leaves you, as again, the successor in title, with a big problem. And over the years, you have this massive Metro Police force, 4,000 by far. Tshwane Metro Police is the largest metropolitan police department in the country. Cape Town is only about 1,800 people. Tshwane's got 4,000. And this, crazy ANC Action SA EFF government has just appointed another 200.
okay.
But your problem is you don't have cars for a quarter of those people. So in the first instance, the Metro Police is not mobile. But this extends to other tools of trade,
Yeah.
like guns and bulletproof vests. And, the question is, do you even want people who haven't been properly appointed and trained to have guns?
No.
But the overarching problem with the 4,000 Metro Police officers, and many of them are very good people, hardworking people, came up through the old traffic department and so forth.
Undeniably.
But the problem is there's no command and control of where they actually are.
Yeah.
In Cape Town, you can track every Metro Police vehicle like you would an Uber. You can see where they are on the map and dispatch them to a place where they're required, and you can, keep the evidence on a cloud or whatever,
Yeah.
and so they're effective. But if you don't know where your Metro Police officers are, you don't have the equipment to track them, you can't ensure their productivity, and you can't guarantee their integrity.
Yeah.
So we're not going to disband the Metro Police. Slowly but surely, you've got to reassert command and control.
Yeah.
And what happened in many instances is you did have Metro Police officers with guns and blue lights, even if they didn't always have the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And they caught people and they bullied them and they extorted bribes and instances there were cases of kidnapping.
Mm.
And we, to his credit, one of my coalition partners, Grandi Tennyson from Freedom Front Plus, held the portfolio of community safety.
Mm.
One of the initiatives that he started was to clean the Metro Police of this rot.
Yeah.
Because the folks who actually do their job would want the rotten apples to be removed.
Of course.
And he actually went and he worked with Gary Nel and the AfriForum Private Prosecution Unit.
Mm.
And there are two cases still in court today where Gary Nel and his team helped the city to actually catch these guys. They were putting up roadblocks in Soweto. That's what I mean. These officers, we laugh about it,
Yeah,
but obviously they committed unspeakable abuse against the residents of the city.
Yeah.
But they were caught in Johannesburg and in Ekurhuleni putting up roadblocks. And so there has to be consequences for folks like that.
Yes.
I can't even recall their names now, but it's still in court. And I think if we get back as the DA with our coalition partners, we're going to double down on that.
Yeah.
We're going to make examples of folks. In our tenure, more Metro Police officers were fired than ever in the well, that's true of the workforce in general because of the illegal strike. But you have to show that there are bad consequences for bad behavior. But most importantly for me is to get a system of command and control. You can track the whereabouts of your officers and you can actually dispatch them to do the core work of a metropolitan police.
And then can you explain to us the story of the defunct power station? Because I think that was a bat that was used to try, and again, something, a kind of theme that's run right through our conversation today has been you you arrive, kind of optimistic. Let's solve these things, and what there is left for you is essentially a bunch of claymores hidden around, different
Mm,
entryway. You walk through a doorway and something blows up. These booby traps set for you all over the place, and the
yeah.
power station was another one of those.
Well, I must say, just as a general overview of my 18 months in office, I foresaw most of the booby traps.
Yeah.
And we actually did a few significant things.
Mm,
The most important of which was to recruit civil servants who were independent of politics, and most of them came out from outside of Tshwane.
mm,
But we also devised a solution to the Hammanskraal water crisis.
mm.
On the power stations, we were very far ahead of actually putting those power stations in the hands of IPPs, the private sector, so we
Yeah.
can not, even if we don't buy electricity directly from those IPPs, by stimulating the market,
Yeah.
we benefit our city. And in time we can reduce the price of electricity. So, whatever the theme of this discussion, I am not at all, not enthusiastic about our prospects of actually turning the situation around.
Yeah.
Maybe because I've seen so much.
Yeah.
I actually know where the booby traps are,
Yeah.
and we had systematically started taking them apart. But on the power stations, those power stations were in use by Tshwane
Mm.
until about 2010.
Okay.
And they were very useful in providing the municipality with power during peak times so that you could offset those expenses from what you purchased from Eskom.
Mm.
And the moment they were put out of use, you lost that benefit.
Yeah.
But the city still has the benefit of these operating licenses, although that means a little bit less with all of the energy reforms.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing about those power stations, they provide an inlet into the grid. So
Mm.
they are useful real estate. And in the case of Rooiwal,
Yeah.
substantially it's still intact. Say with 300 or 400 million rand, a private investor
Mm.
can rejig things there and burn coal, and it's not in the middle of a suburban area, so you won't have a lot of protestation.
Yeah.
And that can have a major impact on the city's electricity supply.
Yeah.
In fact, if you want to offset the coal, there's so much real estate that you can put up panels next to the coal-fired power station. Pretoria West is a bit different. It's probably worth just scrap metal at this stage, but still, it's an inlet into the grid. It's in an industrial area. The city doesn't have the capacity, the capital, the expertise to put those power stations to use.
Mm-hmm.
But if you open it up to the private sector and you give them a 40, 50-year contract that gives them a nice investment horizon, that brings in investment into your city, and it can make Tshwane competitive in relation to other cities that want to draw industry and create jobs.
Yeah.
So we were well on our way to achieve exactly that with an energy plan and task team. But of course, when the ANC EFF Action SA coalition took over, even though the mayor had been my deputy mayor, she had privy to the benefits of our plan.
Yeah.
I don't think she's got the power to make any real decisions, and so that's been left by the wayside. Just as an aside, I think these guys are really keen, the new lot, the ANC coalition, are really keen to be purchasing electricity from IPPs, and I'm worried about potential corruption in that case. So great, purchase energy from IPPs, get independent from Eskom.
Yeah.
But the city has these assets that it can exploit.
Yeah.
In order to create a more competitive energy market.
For sure. And so I've taken up a lot of your time, so I've got to I know you've got to get out of here in a few minutes, so I'm going to run through a last couple of questions, but I think they're very important, and we're going to move away from the question of Tshwane as with you as the mayor and what to do there, and move to the question that comes out of you being dethroned as the mayor. Because one of the things that we think here at the Common Sense is that that action showed quite a lot about how Ramaphosa and the ANC view the government of national unity, because it was essentially a rogue arm of the ANC who were acting, with some of other opposition parties to oust you as mayor, and there was no fuss created by the national level ANC going, these are our new coalition partners, what the hell are you doing? And then also, you know, it might not have been might not have been the right thing to fight over and try collapse it on the DA side, but it did seem as though the DA weren't necessarily willing to kick up the biggest stink about this, despite the fact that you were actually, there was such positive momentum and the direction of travel was starting to really improve, and that you had this great opportunity of kind of showing the difference, because now you're not involved in the government of provincial unity in Gauteng, but you run a Gauteng metro, and so you can show, okay, this is what it's like when the DA is in charge of some things, and this is what it's like when the ANC is in charge. But you were essentially, it was allowed, the national government said, done. You guys.
So you're correct. Panyaza Lesufi and the Gauteng ANC started talking to Herman Mashaba and Action SA about breaking with our coalition and joining the forces of evil, as we know them in Pretoria. And that happened, and that was allowed to happen. There was a brief window period in which the ANC did have the opportunity to replace the coalition which Action SA had brought down with a kind of a government of local unity.
Yeah.
Where, say, the DA, the ANC, the Freedom Front Plus, and the IFP, the parties represented in this government of national unity, would come together at local level and try and govern together.
Yeah.
Now, that didn't happen in Tshwane for the same reason that a government of provincial unity was never established in Gauteng. Because Panyaza Lesufi and the ANC knew that if they invited the DA into government, into Gauteng, and if they were invited into government or kept in government in Tshwane, their patronage racket would have been taken apart. Or at least we and our presence in government would have constituted a significant risk to that patronage network. And there was one particular event just before the ANC brought their motion of no confidence that put all of this stuff into clear perspective for me, even more so after the failed attempts to form a government of local unity.
Yeah.
And that was when we implemented performance standards for waste removal contractors in the city. Unlike Cape Town, Tshwane is entirely dependent on a fleet of service providers to remove the waste on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
You would want to be in a place where you own your own trucks, because then you eliminate a lot of the wastages and incentives for manipulation. But be that as it may, waste removal contractors were underperforming. The worst effects of this were in the townships. Ironic for the reasons that I'll give to you in a moment. But we said, not politically, it was part of a broader set of performance standards that we implemented. Waste removal trucks have to be fitted with a tracking device so that we can see where you are. You can't bill us for waste collection in Tshwane if you're also running your trucks in Mogale City or Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Number two, those trucks need to be can't be older than 8 years, because it's a function of roadworthiness, breakdowns, etc.
Yeah.
And the third important thing is that all of these things also have to apply to your subcontractors. You can't just be in this tender game, win a contract, and then give a guy with a 1400 Nissan Bakkie, which was an actual case, by the way, the job of doing waste collection for a particular area.
Yeah.
When we implemented these initiatives, just like the wage strike that happened in Tshwane, there was mayhem, there was chaos. Our landfill sites were closed, violent uprising by these contractors that had now been eliminated, that couldn't comply with these performance standards. And at that stage, George Machila, the regional secretary of the ANC in Tshwane, phoned one of my colleagues and basically warned her, if you don't reverse these things, we are going to bring a motion of no confidence. Now, George Machila is not a councillor, but we knew that he was in the waste removal game. So connected to the ANC in the waste removal game. And that told me that there is a very strong reason why the ANC would not want to co-govern with somebody like me.
Yeah.
Because I would not turn a blind eye. I would continue with imposing performance standards. I would push even further.
Yeah.
And that would be against the vested interests of the ANC. So the ANC in Gauteng is very divided. The guys that we spoke to on the side, they're like a local faction. They've got a connection to Fikile Mbalula. Then you get the two provincial factions, and it can become very confusing.
Yeah.
But what unites all of these people is that if the collective business interests are threatened, they will double down and they will stick there with their 35% or whatever, and they try and run a province and a city, and obviously try and recruit parties like Action SA to help them govern.
Yeah.
My party tried its best. I have to say, Helen Zille, in particular as chairperson of the FedEx, tried her best in a relationship with Fikile Mbalula to try and facilitate negotiations of a government of local unity. But in the end, again, money talks, and the ANC decided against good government.
Yeah, as many Uber drivers have very sagely put to me, it's politics of the stomach. You can't stop someone from eating. And so,
although that's exactly what we intend to do.
And that's a great way. Thank you for leading into one of my last questions so well, because one of I think the kind of things that baffles me, sitting here with you across from me, is you're an extremely capable, talented, smart individual. But why are you doing this job that you're doing? Because it is so hard, so dangerous. The assassinations are now spreading throughout the country. You don't make tons of money from it unless you have a side hustle through it, as you have pointed out. Everyone blames you for every problem that they have once you become the mayor. And then also when you're campaigning, it's a lot of the time you're fighting against a massive amount of vested interest with a very low likelihood of success. So why do you and your DA colleagues even try and do this?
So this sounds almost like that little that advert. Was it Shackleton? Who was the guy that did the expedition?
Oh, Ernest Shackleton, yes.
Yeah, there's I don't know if it's true or not, but there's this description of what all the terrible things to expect if you were to join this expedition.
Yes.
And that was their advert, and that's the irony.
Yeah.
These things are exhilarating. It is absolutely exhilarating, the prospect of making changes of personnel and policy and vision in government, and then steering a city or a country in a different direction.
Yeah.
You cannot offer me a corporate job or a legal job or a consulting job that offers that potential impact.
Yes.
You are literally rewriting history. It's a sliding doors. You're picking in which direction to send the country.
Yeah.
Now, I want to differ with you on one point. I agreed with everything else you said, and that is that the prospects of success are so very low. I think there are certain things that make our prospects better. The first is that we now have, unlike 2016, extensive experience in government. Not just the nuts and bolts of government and projects and water and electricity and Metro Police, but also the knowledge of how these cadre-captured administrations function. In Tshwane, we had the benefit, as I mentioned before, of recruiting a top management from outside of the city, starting with city manager Johan Metler, who had been in Nelson Mandela Bay previously. He helped to recruit an entire sort of next level of top management.
Yeah.
And although a change of personnel doesn't guarantee a change of culture is impossible without a change of top leadership.
Yes.
We devised a solution to the Hammanskraal water crisis in cooperation with national government. We stood up to an unlawful violence strike, and that saved the city 600 million rand, which enabled a payments deal with Eskom. We paid off the last, debt of corrupt ANC era contracts.
Yeah.
So the city was moving in the right direction, and we've got a lot of material to be convinced that institutions like Tshwane can be turned around.
Yeah.
I also believe that folks better understand the politics. Like, if you're in Tshwane and you're still voting for Action SA, after everything that Herman Mashaba has done to you, I believe there must be something else going on. But we've seen Action SA has decimated their own support base. We've seen in Parliament the parties like Good, Rise Mzansi, etc. They will support an ANC VAT hike, and I think that message is also getting through to the voters. So no guarantee, success is not guaranteed, but I think that the prospects for change in 2026 in the metros, including Tshwane, are much better than they were ever before.
So I think that leads perfectly into my last question, which is, and we should make this very brief because I am really stealing your time now. what does the DA need to be successful, you think? Like, I'm talking now electorally on the national level, and what do you need to be successful electorally on the local level in like a minute? That's good.
The DA must offer a compelling alternative to the ANC. We
Mm.
have to have, to use a phrase that John Steenhuisen used before, we can't have blue jelly. We have to have blue steel.
Mm.
So what the party is now doing, differentiating ourselves on empowerment, on race-based policy, in various other ways, is incredibly important.
Yes.
Because if we are just like the ANC, we're not going to produce different results from the ANC. It's only if we offer an alternative, and if we succeed, we're succeeding at a lower scale in home affairs and ministries such as those. We're succeeding with court cases, which is completely outside of the government of national unity.
Yeah.
But South Africa needs an alternative vision if we want a future that is not the same as the present that we've had. That is the key to success at local government. We need people to register to vote. And it's never been as easy to register to vote as it is now. You don't even have to wait for registration weekend. You can do it at home. You need your ID document. You get a PIN. You put that PIN into a one-time PIN. You put that in, and you are registered. You just need a confirmation after that. It is incredibly important that DA supporters go out in high numbers, especially if you live in an enclave, if you live in an estate, if you live in a townhouse complex. If nobody ever knocks on your door except for your family or whoever, your neighbors, you need to please introduce yourself to the Democratic Alliance, because we need high levels of voter participation in this local government election in order to win big enough majorities to govern these cities and to change them. And that is going to be the key for us.
Well, good luck with trying to get those people to turn out. I've been Gabriel Makin, and this has been Talking Sense.